What the hell? What the hell? What the hell is up? Hi, and welcome to this new experimental podcast of mine. My name is Claire, and I'm here to ask the tough questions in life, such as, what the hell is up? With you? With me? With the world? With those crazy vegan YouTubers out there on the web? This podcast is a plight for me to be more honest and to put something out there that might be an encouragement to others. I'm keen on honesty and authenticity, yet I have somewhat learned to hide. So I hope that each podcast episode will allow me to get more comfortable in sharing out about my journey. Topics which will be addressed include my journey of mental health struggles, self-esteem and self-worth, sexuality, and a whole slew of other potentially relevant tidbits of my story. Thanks so very much for tuning in to listen. Grab some coffee or tea and think of this as the coffee shop date of your dreams. Hello, friends, and welcome back to the podcast. You are tuning into the 5th episode of What the Hell is Up, and I'm just, again, so thankful and blessed that you're tuning in to listen. I hope that you're having an amazing morning or a lovely evening. I guess this podcast is going to be going out right after Thanksgiving, so I hope that you had an amazing Thanksgiving if you celebrate it, in whatever capacity that means for you. Hopefully it was not a stressful one. I hope it was just filled with coziness and hygge. Hopefully you got to spend some time with people you love, whether that was friends or family, or just do something warm for yourself. And there's definitely a lot to be thankful for, so yeah, let's celebrate that for sure. Yes, gratitude is immensely important. Right now I'm grateful for having free, unrushed time to work on this podcast. I'm thankful for just these different people in my life who have been showing up in random ways. And yeah, sometimes it can be so unexpected, what season of life we end up in and the people who end up meaning the most to us, I guess. And I'm just really grateful that I think God has a way of just working things out, I suppose. That might just be an optimistic way of looking at things. But yeah, I don't know. I guess embracing new things and embracing what is present in this moment and just being mindful of the blessings that are here at the time is really important, and something I'm really, really appreciating right now, or trying to, at least. Maybe this is just me trying to. Okay, can you tell I'm nervous? I am heckin' nervous to start this podcast, because today, I'm wondering what the hell is up with who I am, what the hell is up with my sexuality, what the hell is up with this idea of coming out, what the hell is up with how I identify. And okay, I have so many disclaimers as I go into this podcast, because I know that this topic can be approached from a lot of different angles. There could be an approach taken which I feel like is really prolific? Prolific, yes, very prolific in the world of YouTube, these like dramatic coming out stories. And sometimes I feel like there's even like, if you just type in like my coming out, I feel like I'm curious what the first video actually that comes up if you type in my coming out, or just coming out on YouTube. Let's see what it is. Okay, if I first type in coming out, we have coming out compilation, and then coming out BuzzFeed. Later we have I'm Bisexual by Dodie, coming out while being Christian. Okay, maybe these are just the ones I've watched. Okay, here we go. Ingrid Nilsson, Something I Want You to Know, coming out. Jamie's World, My Sexual. These are probably just the ones that come up on my feed. I feel like there definitely is a world of like these coming out videos with like, I mean, there's a plethora of people who do them, but sometimes I've seen certain cis female identifying young gals, often white, really portraying this aesthetic with their coming out story. And okay, maybe it's just artistic expression, but I'm just saying that there's like an aesthetic that goes along with this coming out vibe, and maybe a little bit of pretentiousness going into that. So there's that route of a coming out story. There's another route of a coming out story, which is just maybe a lot more straightforward, focused on like the hardships of a coming out experience, really coming out publicly for the sake of having everybody know this, and almost like a confession of sorts. So I don't know where this podcast is gonna fall in that, but my fears are that this could be perceived as just another, I guess, slightly pretentious thing to talk about myself, which, okay, maybe this whole damn podcast is a way to talk about myself. But ultimately, I think that where I'm at in my journey of sexuality and coming out might be important because it has multiple nuances to it that greatly affected my self-esteem, my faith walk, my relationships with others, and I think it also has been, I'm a very relational person, and I don't know, I believe that despite the fact that we are individuals, we live in systems and communities, and there's no way that we haven't been affected by our communities, and we affect our communities more than we know. I don't know, I just believe that I am the way I am because of the people who I've been around too, and I can choose things for myself to believe, but undoubtedly I've been affected by the people around me. And so I guess also I just think that my story has been deeply affected by other people, and I don't know why that makes me feel a little bit more like sharing this out. But the other reason I want to share this out is because as I continue with this podcast, I do want to talk about, certain issues and certain experiences, and I would like certain aspects of my identity and context to be known so that I can approach these things and you can know where I'm coming from, and maybe you can even find some relatability in my story. Maybe there is an aspect of kind of always longing to come out to certain people in my life who I wish that I would have. Maybe this is just feeling like a ton of buildup, but I'm really not sure where to start with this all. So there it is. Yeah, so, okay. Also, it's been a while since I've come out, quote unquote, to somebody. So saying it into my room is kind of nice. But let's see. Before I freak you out and say that I'm coming out as like, I don't know, a vampire or a like, I don't know, what else could I come out as that could be kind of disturbing? I don't know, something else, something really dark. I am not alone in the fact that I am not straight. And I'm so curious if that's like really surprising to hear. If it's not, I don't really care, but it's just kind of funny to think about. Yeah, I am not straight, but I am also not entirely sure how I identify, and I'm not ready to totally pin that down for the sake of a podcast. I will throw out some identifiers that I think might describe how I identify, and this is just for the sake of clarity. It's not for the sake of, I don't know. I guess I really don't think these labels are that important, but if I was to try to describe myself, I would probably say, there's disclaimers because there's just so much talk about these things as it is, and I hate the fact that people are often criticized for the way they describe themselves or the wording that they use, because look, the sexuality business is extremely fluid and attraction is extremely fluid, and there are so many nuances to it, and the way our society is, it tries to polarize things and create dichotomies and categories that do not exist. And I think the reason I have struggled in this area of my life is because of these categories and the way that we are often forced into believing that we have to identify a certain way and feeling like we have to have things figured out. And I think I just grew up in a context that required that of me. And I think I also brought a lot of that onto myself. If there's any direction that we can go as a society, I think eliminating, so dramatic, putting less weight in labels and categories would be so much better for everybody involved. But like I said, some identifiers are helpful just to get an idea of where I'm at. So I am not straight. I have considered pansexual as a potential identifier for myself because pansexual just means that I am attracted to multiple gender expressions. And this is so close to bisexual. Sometimes people define these the same. My understanding before I started really looking into some of these things was bisexual simply meant attraction to both male identifying and female identifying people, but actually it just means that you can be you are attracted to two genders, whatever those genders are. And some people use bisexual to describe just being attracted to multiple genders, but to me, I have shied away from claiming that as an identity because, in my opinion, I guess to me it felt still like a connotation of being attracted to a typically masculine presenting male identifying person and a very feminine identifying female, which didn't feel comfortable for me, I guess, which is why pansexual is a bit more inclusive of a term. And for me, it means that I could be attracted to somebody who is gender nonconforming or more gender neutral, but also masculine presenting people and female presenting people. And the reason, I have been attracted to females, males, and non-gender conforming individuals to some level. I also think maybe pansexual might be the label that I would use to describe myself, because I guess for me, gender expression has not been the most important factor in attraction, and I suppose this could be the case for lots of people. For a while, this made me feel like, am I demisexual? Which, if you don't know, demisexual is a person who does not experience sexual attraction unless they form an emotional connection. And it's kind of on the spectrum of asexuality. Yeah, for a while I thought that might be the case, but no, that's not the case either. Because, well, okay, one, I feel like if a person who does not experience sexual attraction unless they form an emotional connection, well, I don't know. I think that's like a good way to look at being actually attracted to a person, and not, I don't know. That wasn't right, because I have been attracted to people on more of a surface level. But okay, now that we've started there, knowing that perhaps I'm questioning, and maybe I will never have a label figured out, that is okay with me. I am not stressed about that at the moment. Maybe it's because a friend recently, they knew that I was questioning my sexuality, and my friend just gave me a lot of peace with telling me, like, don't stress about your sexuality during this time either. It can be so fluid and ever changing. Just stay true to what God wants for you and you'll have peace. And wow, I wish that more people would have this kind of perspective to share without asking more questions or saying anything else very stressful. So thank you so much. I'm sure that friend of mine is probably listening, and I love you so much. Thank you. Today, okay, this is gonna be so bad. Before I started recording this podcast, I was on my Pinterest because I am thinking about going to Goodwill to get a few new clothes, and I feel like I just needed like some fresh style inspiration. So I thought I'd go to my style Pinterest board to see if there was anything on there that I'd pinned that would be good to try to like inspire me at Goodwill. But when I looked on there, basically I haven't pinned any style things in a while. I haven't pinned a lot of style things in a while. But the things that I have pinned were definitely pinned back in the summer when I was really kind of challenged by figuring out my style as I was grappling with my sexuality. And I think this is something that a few people I know have gone through. I don't know, I think that is a topic which I want to expand on in another podcast, because that is really having to do with, I think, the way that we are perceived and the stereotypes which come with certain sexual orientations, and how maybe gender expression and style goes into that. So basically my Pinterest style board is like something I'm now looking at and thinking like, oh yeah, like I guess I still like this style, but it's like, it is more masculine looking, and I don't think that I'm really identifying, or I don't think my style expression is really aligning with that anymore. And it's interesting to look back on it. And yeah, that's a topic which I definitely want to expand on in another video, or what the hell am I, a YouTuber? No, in another podcast, and maybe bring in some other people's perspectives on just that whole idea of sexual orientation and how style goes into that expression. But anyway, okay, so I am going to be doing this podcast in multiple parts because, like I said, multiple people have been important in informing my story on discovering my own sexual orientation, coming out to myself, coming out to other people, and even where I'm at now. So I do want to bring in those additional perspectives, and also I think that'll help to just have a more well-rounded idea of coming out. I don't know what that noise is. I don't want this podcast to feel like a self-centered way of just coming out for myself. I want this to maybe inspire someone else to feel more peaceful in their journey, because mine has been one that has grappled with faith and religion and a somewhat conservative upbringing, and a sister who also identifies as queer, and just a lot of moving parts. So to start, I want to share a journal entry that I wrote back in June when I was coming to terms with not identifying as straight. And yeah, this was not that long ago. I hadn't expected this feeling of being stifled, of hiding a part of myself that is real from those I love. I feel a hazy sense of guilt in withholding something about what makes me me, and yet I fear the way that it could label or define me negatively. I even feel a palpable distance around others. I'm living in this place of having fear about showing too much. It's so odd the way this happened. I wonder what might have happened if I had been honest with my subtle intrigue, appreciation, and admiration of girls. I remember year 14, trying to stay present in conversation after conversation about boys with my friend group. Band camp, summer. Clara was shy and awkward and longing to feel normal, accepted, at ease with myself and others. There were two girls in particular. One had this charisma that was striking. She made people feel safe and welcomed. She was confident and had this humble strength and simple beauty. I remember her running into her at school and complimented her on her hair, which was softly curled that day around her soft face and cute smile. She looked back at me. "I like your face," she complimented me back, and it felt like this boost, which made me nervous, but I felt warm in that moment. I wonder when my sense of right and wrong regarding sexuality first emerged. I grew up Christian, not only innocent and shy, but cognizant of my decisions, perpetually carrying feelings of guilt. When I was so young, maybe 9 years old, I remember carrying this feeling of complacency and yet doubt. It wasn't doubt that made me cynical or simply unbelieving like I saw with other people. This was a complicated sense of longing to please and obey God, and also feel safe and known. It was like my soul was itching with the summer heat as I desired to pray and serve, yet I didn't feel close to God in any way. I don't know what taught me to feel that way, is the thing. My mom has never been especially pious, perhaps my dad, but even then, religion and spirituality weren't huge priorities in our family, but they became so strikingly for me. Perhaps even in my years of confirmation at Lutheran Church, I confronted this feeling of being different. I had no interest in the gossip of the older girls, nor did the boys interest me particularly. At least I had two friends who were kind to me. But I just remember sitting outside at confirmation retreat when I was a young 12-year-old. I tried to feel included with the older kids who oddly wanted to talk about sex. I did not know what to say or how to engage. Could it be that my disinterest in those boys was paralleled by a sense of anxiety with the girls? Like this one girl who looked more womanly than I ever felt and showed this confidence that carried her. So back to year 14. I was at church with my sisters when the pastor was talking about sin. In particular, he was talking about the importance of confessing our sins to God and then to others. I was hiding tears during the service as this sick feeling of shame crept its way out. Here I was, apparently Christian girl who struggled with the fact that I had feelings for girls. How can one reasonably mourn their own feelings for certain humans? Maybe I never developed those obsessive crushes because I never let myself, because they just didn't really come naturally towards boys. My older sister asked me in the car, "Claire, he talked about how everyone sins and falls short of the glory of God. But what do you do?" she asked in earnest. She meant to say, "It seems like you don't have sins, Claire, but you must. What are they?" I wonder if she hoped I'd have some spiritual answer to say, "Well, sis, I struggle with pride, but I pray for God's strength and forgiveness and am free." Or I rely on God, but I experience sin too. The tears started falling and falling and falling. In the back seat, I held my head in my hands, and for some reason, I remember it snowing outside. I cried because my sin felt exposed. I cried because I longed to tell them, and yet I thought they might never accept me for this. We sat in the car in a Burger King parking lot for at least 2 hours as they gently coaxed me to tell them what was going on. At some point, their own tears started rolling too, and they probably told me that they were getting worried if something was worse than it probably was. Eventually, I disclosed the truth that I had feelings, mere sentiments in my heart and mind, no actions, toward girls, and that while I had never acted on them, it felt sinful. I told them that I had prayed a lot and had cried to God to take away those feelings. I think I even felt encouraged by the fact that I admitted this sin to them. I think I made it seem as if the feelings were in the past. "I still want to marry a man," I said. My sisters comforted me, reassured me that they loved me. In this journal entry, I'm entering back into a memory, which has become important in this story. Perhaps it's obvious, but I was pretty, attached to an evangelical, conservative understanding of faith and religion, and this was one of the reasons I felt so deeply ashamed about having attraction for girls. And this is honestly still hard to say that because, also just because of heteronormativity, I think it feels still like this sense of there being something wrong with me. And that is something that I'm still unlearning because at the bottom of my heart, I know that it's not true. I know that notion is rooted in an innate this notion is rooted in heteronormativity and heterosexism, which basically dictates that non-heterosexual relationships are inferior to heterosexual relationships. And I think also just both in the church and even just outside of the church, in my experience in high school and growing up, in talking with friends, having little understanding of other ways of going about attraction and relationships. I had no idea, and so I felt otherly, I felt weird, and when I started to realize that I was not attracted to just boys, I was in my freshman year of high school, and maybe a little bit before then, and I'd never told anybody except for my sisters in this moment, and it would take me several years to ever decide to explore that more or tell anybody else or maybe feel okay with it. And that is because of things that happened along the way and things that ended up growing me more than I can explain. So, okay, well, I guess right now I'm just gonna go ahead and keep talking about this idea of coming out in general, and then I will backtrack and explain why, despite the fact that I had attraction for girls, I never ended up looking into that in high school and in most of college. The saddest part, I think, about looking into this topic is that along the way, people can get hurt and feelings can be confused, and I don't know, I've seen this in my own life and in others, I think, because of it's important to be able to explore your sexual orientation and attraction and relationships, because it's not cut and dry, it's not easy to figure out, and I guess I ended up hurting people along the way, and that hurts me. I don't know, maybe I wish that things could have gone differently in certain ways, but also every experience that I had has been part of my journey and has been important to me, and I've tried to be as honest as I could along the way with what I knew at the time, and that has never been a bad move on my part. I will say, as I go along in this, there is no pressure to come out. There is no pressure to tell certain people certain things. You should never feel pressured to tell certain people on account of a relationship or anything else. But also, in my experience, being honest, despite the difficulty in doing so, has been a release of tension and has ultimately been constructive in the long term for different relationships that I've had. And I'm not just talking romantic partners, like I'm talking family and friends and everything in between. But yeah, so coming out, just to talk a little bit about coming out, for me, coming out became mostly just important when I dated a female identifying person. And I think that's just obvious, probably, that, well, for me, because of heteronormativity, I assumed that my attraction was not as legitimate. Maybe with women, I never came out because of different things that I'll share later on. Really, I had this deeply ingrained homophobia. But once I started dating a female identifying person, it became more important to tell people, because obviously she was not a male, and if she was not a male, I was not straight, and that needed to be explained. So yeah, I didn't start coming out because I was like, some people come out because they realize and they think through their attraction, and wow, what a concept, Claire. Why didn't I do that? Because it becomes a lot more complicated to tell somebody that you're dating someone while also coming out to them. I will say, don't recommend that. But that I think that's the way that it often goes with people. And for me, I first came out to my sisters and a couple of people closest to me, and I was extremely blessed with one of my sisters because she identifies as queer and could really understand where I was coming from with a lot of things. Finding those kinds of allies was really important. But later on, I came out to other friends who I wanted to tell, and there's people who I never came out to who might listen to this. So in that sense, I'm glad that you know now. Even though the thing about coming out is that in my experience, each time I would tell somebody, I would get extremely terrified that they would react poorly, that their idea of me would be changed, that I would be somebody different to them, that it would tarnish their perception of me, and all of these things are also just coming from that embedded heteronormativity. And I think this whole journey for me has equally been for my own sake, but also for me to better empathize with people in non-heterosexual traditional relationships, because just these concepts of inferiority and internalized heterosexism are so ingrained, and it's very hard to not think about them. So coming out was hard, but I also wanted to, because I felt like I needed to be honest with people, and I think people might have even sometimes perceived like, Claire, why are you so scared of this? This is not a big deal to me. And every time I heard that, like, gosh, it was such a relief. And each time somebody encouraged me that they loved me and that I'd figure things out was an immense blessing to me. And I'm just thankful for each person that was part of that journey with me. And for people who celebrated my sexual orientation and did not consider it a point of contention or something that was inherently negative. Those who like celebrated that with me, and I don't know, now I kind of do think like, okay, maybe this is something that makes me different, like this is something that makes me unique, and that's not a bad thing just because it's different. The greatest thing is still coming out to oneself and feeling a deep sense of acceptance with like who you really are inside. Maybe it's apparent in my tone that I'm still working on that. And just for clarity's sake, I am currently dating a male identifying man and a male identifying boy, and he is amazing. Where was I going with this? Yeah, okay. So I am currently dating a male identifying person, and he is amazing. And this idea of coming out has become not as relevant for me because of, well, yeah, probably that's obvious to you. And some people have this notion that, oh, I figured it out, like I actually like men, and that was a phase. And I can attest to the fact that, like, that is not the case. Bisexual erasure is a real thing. Just because I am dating a boy now does not invalidate the attraction and feelings that I have had toward people of other genders. And that's not to say that I want to date anybody else. I don't want to date anybody else. But I guess when I have experienced people kind of invalidating my sexual orientation with the fact that I'm now dating a guy, it has made me feel like, oh, well, what was wrong with me when I was dating a girl? Like, or what was wrong with me when I was feeling these attractions toward others? Like, that was kind of, I don't know, it must have been rooted in something like kind of weird or bad. And no, it's normal to experience attraction for different people and to have crushes. And I just want this podcast to somehow help dive into the fact that sexuality is fluid and attraction is complicated. And if we can break down categories and barriers so that youth can explore and feel comfortable in their crushes, then that is something wonderful. We should celebrate diversity of gender expression and sexual orientation and not abide by these categories and binaries which our society has fallen into. I don't know, I felt a sense of like needing to explain myself that I'm dating a guy when I came out to people when I was dating a girl, and that is tricky because I feel this odd sense of responsibility for them knowing who I really am. I feel like slightly guilty that they could feel like I was lying to them when really I was just trying to figure things out, and it was a process. And even, like I've said, see the way I'm talking about it, even if I told somebody that I was dating a girl, that doesn't invalidate, like who I am dating now does not invalidate my identity, and I don't know why I fear their perceptions of me. But yeah, dating a guy has made coming out not at the forefront of my mind because it seems to be a straight relationship. And like, luckily, the people who I love and am closest to, like, they do understand me, and that's the most important. And I'm not like, I don't really care who knows who I really am, and I'm not about to focus on, like, I guess I don't feel the need to explain, like, no, I'm not straight, I'm pansexual, or to every person I meet. Like, I'm not saying that's my goal at all. Actually, the possibility of my relationship as straight is privilege, and I am blessed by that being the case in my life right now. I know that sounds weird, but people who won't listen to this podcast, certain family members, not having to explain this is a blessing, and dating a male presenting person has its privileges and benefits. And I'm not saying that's why I'm doing it. Like, no, I genuinely want to be with this person, but I'm just saying that coming out has not been as important to me, and because of that, I know that me being in a heterosexual relationship is a privilege. And yeah, I just want to acknowledge that, and also acknowledge that I've come out relatively unscathed. And so many people who have had very difficult coming out experiences and have experienced traumas unlike what I have at all. And my heart goes out to you if this is triggering reminders of things you've experienced. I hope that this story could just make me more relatable to some people who wouldn't have assumed this about me. But also, like I've said, I think my coming out could illuminate certain things about my experience and everything about it, which I'm gonna dive into more in another podcast, because this is just gonna be the first in a series on coming out and, let's just say, being questioning or being pansexual, or I don't know, we could even just call this like Claire's Rainbow Talks or something. Yeah, that sounds cheesy as hell, but that might just be what it is. So, okay friends, I have kind of an exciting little tidbit to throw into this podcast, and I'm hoping to keep this going for future podcasts. I don't know, I guess for my last podcast, when I included a song by Byland, I really loved the opportunity to showcase someone else's art that connected to something that I was talking about. And I mean, I'm sure I'm not alone in like finding a lot of comfort and relatability in music, and just like kind of enjoying those sentiments that you can really feel. But also I just really like small artists with unique missions, I guess. So, and I love the idea of kind of supporting art that is like sharing something out. So basically I'm hoping to be able to include this kind of music in future podcasts, like basically showcasing like local artists around the Seattle area or in other parts, other cities, but just kind of finding like singer-songwriter folks who are willing to share their music with my podcast, and hopefully you can enjoy listening to it too. So for today's podcast, I wanted to include something that supported me sharing a part of my story. And so for today's podcast, I wanted to share a song by Heather Mae, and this song is called Hero. Heather Mae is a singer-songwriter who has an amazing EP out called I Am Enough, and I was just struck by the way that she has kind of this very powerful voice that she's using to communicate about her experience being a queer woman, and she is like very body positive and just empowering individuals in claiming their voice in their story, and kind of really celebrating our uniqueness. So I'm just really inspired by what she's doing and how she's using her art to kind of stand up for voices that can go unheard. She's also extremely talented and has won numerous awards, and is just kind of an amazing activist for the community. And I just really loved her sound, so I thought I would just drop a little bit of Hero in here.
Can't take this tornado in my brain. Giving up, I'm crying. Can't shake this wild hurricane. I'm through with trying. 'Cause I've been beaten, I've been bruised, I've been ripped to shreds, hell, I've been used. I need healing, I'm tired of taking these hits. Got a new song to sing, it goes like this. I may be broken, but my feet are still on the ground. And if I give up, this game will never be crowned. Even under ashes, I've got glory. And I'm the hero in my own story.
A little preview to the rest of this discussion that I'm going to have about coming out and sexuality, and kind of diving more deeply into different chapters of my story which have led me here. Hopefully you want to come along for the ride. maybe you think this is all really boring and dumb. That's fine too. Please let me know your comments. I would love to hear them. Okay, so now for a hyggeligt tip of the day. Claire's hyggeligt tip of the day is... Okay, my hyggeligt tip of the day is pretty simple. Lighting candles. You can light candles at any time of the day. It's like noon and I have 2 candles burning. My candle stock is running low, so I'm short on candles, you guys. We're running out of rations and we must conserve. But yeah, so candles can be expensive sometimes, and I think some candles are like between $15 and $20, and that is outrageous, friends. I recommend going to IKEA, and you can find awesome like unscented or scented candles. If you want to go with a real hygge Danish vibe, you have to go with the non-scented candles because there's a focus on simplicity and earthiness, and non-scented candles are more natural. But some people really like scented candles, and definitely they can be nice for the season. So if you want to find a scented candle, IKEA also has like simple scents. Like I have some vanilla tea candles from IKEA. Also Goodwill has a weird little candle section. They're not actually used like thrifted items. They're just you know how Goodwill like also sells these weird packaged products? Well, they sell little candles, so I had a pumpkin one that was nice. And then Marshall's also has cheaper candles. So I recommend these 3 places. I also want to figure out how to make my own candles. I haven't really looked into this, but I feel like it'll probably be helpful because I tend to go through my candles pretty quickly. So yes, infuse your space with candles. Candles can bring a little bit of comfort to your room when you're by yourself, or a nice candle with dinner, even when you're by yourself or with people, is lovely. Bring a little light in the darkness of winter. A little illumination is a blessing and a comfort. Okay, so it's been a few days since I actually recorded this little hyggeligt tip about candles, but I wanted to tack on a little recent anecdote that really like added to my little body of hygge experiences, I guess you could say. So on Thanksgiving, I was with my boyfriend and my friend, and we were getting everything ready for Thanksgiving. We did like a bunch of cooking. It was super fun. We got to make like a whole vegan meal, and as we were like in the process, we were pretty much finished and we were like waiting for people to arrive. The power went out, you guys, and I don't know if anyone else lost power on Thanksgiving, but it was just like the lights flickered, and you know, we did that thing where you kind of gasp and you look around at everybody and wonder like, oh my gosh, but then they went back on and we were like, oh, okay, we're fine. And then it happened again. And the power stayed off for like, I don't know, not too long, maybe like an hour and a half or 2 hours, but it was dark and we were like, oh, well, okay, I guess our cooking is kind of on pause. Luckily the stove was working, and so we were able to finish up what we were cooking on the stove. And we put some dishes in the oven just to keep them warm. So the food was like working out, but just the whole house was dark. And yeah, the whole house was super dark. And so of course we started lighting candles, and we kind of dispersed them all around the house. And I guess after like this long day of cooking all this food in this like preparation for people to arrive, and kind of that eager expectation of like having it be a memorable holiday, we just kind of sat there. We're like drinking some red wine, listening to some music with these candles going in the darkness. There was truly nothing like it. Like ultimate hygge, friends, with the rain on the lake. And I don't know, I wish I could just draw you into that moment, because it was truly so lovely, and I think we could all agree that we quite enjoyed having the power go out. Yeah, but just like that feeling of being in the darkness and having that little illumination was so lovely, and it really made a special Thanksgiving. Everything came together later because the power came back on, and anyways, like, I think we would have been fine even if the power stayed off, but like everyone arrived and we enjoyed the meal, and I think just that simplicity of things not turning out exactly how you prepare is I mean, that's what it's all about, friends. Just enjoying what comes up and making the most of it. How hygge is that? So, yeah, I guess I just wanted to add on to the fact that candles are not only decorative, but they are highly utilitarian, and it's necessary to have them on hand in cases of power outage or probably natural disasters. In addition to uplifting hyggeness, it's very important to have candles to actually light up a space when you're in the midst of holiday preparations and so many stomachs are waiting on you. Thank you again for listening to this ramble session about rainbowness and me claiming who I am and my journey, which has brought me here. I'd love to hear your feedback about this. And I know I don't have like a very refined way of speaking on these things. It is coming from my heart, though. Please know that. Sending you all the hygge vibes, friends, and I wish you peace and love. See you later.